All right, so this is a Medeco biaxial. It's got 6 pins, so obviously we've got drivers here that have to be set, but then it's got a sidebar here where all the pins have to be rotated correctly. There are prongs on the sidebar that need to line up with the gates on the key pins. This is a key pin. You can see the deep true gate there. This one also has a false gate right there next to the true gate. Those false gates combine pretty hard. Even picking counterclockwise, sometimes they will appear to be rotated correctly, but you won't find out till later that they're in a false gate, and then you will have to release a lot of tension, probably drop things to get them out of the false gate. So if you follow the LPU belt system, these are supposed to be raked prior to picking, just to make sure that the key pins are scrambled. So generally with Medeco, if you tension counterclockwise, usually the sidebar will bind first, and you can set the rotations, probably not all of them, but you can probably set a fair amount of them. And the advantage of that is, if you're having trouble rotating one, you can pretty much release all tension because you don't have to really worry about any of them dropping to move that one in particular. Sometimes you'll get to a point where you need to set a driver pin in order for the sidebar to bind a little harder to keep setting the rotations, even when you're picking counterclockwise. So to test the rotations, you want to scrub the pin. If it's set, you'll feel it give way to the pick. You may even hear it clicking. You won't always hear it clicking. Sometimes they won't. So usually you don't want to rely on sound as feedback, but in Medecos it can be pretty helpful. So I don't know if you can hear that. A little click. So pin 1 is rotated correctly. Pin 2 is clicking. Pin 3 it feels pretty loose, though. I don't know if maybe the sidebar just isn't binding enough. Pin 4 is stiff. So I can feel the pick stop and actually bounce off the bottom of that pin. So that's pin 4, so I'm going to release tension, and then I'm going to angle the pick and push, if I want to try to rotate it that direction, and then I'm going to rotate the pick to the left and push. I'm trying to go that direction. So it's kind of a scrubbing, pushing it, and try pulling it. Sometimes you can get right behind that pin and hook it, and then pull at and rotate the pick at the same time to try to pull it around. There we go, there's pin 4. So I'm releasing pretty much all the tension, trying to rotate that around. Then I'll reapply tension. It's still stiff. There, it just loosened up. That one's clicking a little bit, but not very loudly. So that's why you don't really want to always rely on feedback. Now I'm going to go back and check the rest of these. And 1, I can feel it's loose. I can't hear it clicking, but it still feels a little bound. So there, I just went ahead and lifted it. And now it's clicking. So in that case, that one had to be, the driver was binding too hard. So it had to be set to driver to the shear line, and then check the rotation. So Now pin 2 is kind of feeling the same way. I can feel it's a little bit loose, but not real loose. So I'm going to go ahead and lift that one a little bit. There we go. So the driver is set, or it's at a spool section of a mushroom or something, but it's loose enough to where I can tell that the rotation is correct, or possibly in a false gate at this point, but there's not much else I can really do with it at this point. All right, now 3 is binding. That one's clicking a little bit. I don't know. It's either in a false gate or the driver pin's going to need to be set. So there, I just set the driver pin, and now it's loose. So that's pretty much all I can do with it at this point. In the process of doing that, either pin 4 has moved, or the sidebar is binding harder, and it was in a false gate originally. So number 4 is stiff again. That clicking that you're hearing, that's the pick bouncing off the pin. You got to be able, if you're going to go by sound, you got to be able to tell the difference in the sound, but that's why I like to go by feel too, because I can feel that pin is stiff and that pick is just bouncing off the tip of that pin. I'm going to release a little bit of tension. Try to get that rolled around. And there it just freed up. Now pin 5. It feels slightly springy. I think the driver pin's binding. Yep, so right there I just lifted it, and now it's very loose. I think I got the same situation on 6. There, now 6 is really loose. 5 is still good. 4 is good. 3 is binding. So I'm going to release some tension. Try to roll 3 around. I think the height is good. I think it's just a rotation. Release tension. Pushing on the edge of that pin. Pulling from the other side. At this point, you may have to release so much tension that you drop pins, but you just have to reset them. Usually the rotations will stay put unless you mess them up with the pick, coming in or out or adjusting another pin. But if they just fall, usually they will go back in the same rotation that you had them. So see, when I tighten up tension there, it's still stiff. So I'm going to have to probably release a little bit more tension on pin 3 to get it to rotate. And probably drop some things. All right, right there it feels good, but I think something moved. Pin 4 dropped. 5 dropped. 6 is still good. 1's good. 2 dropped. 3 is good. 4. I believe 6 dropped. All right, 6 is good. believe 5 is good. 4, 3 is still stiff. So I did not get it out of the false gate. So I'm going to release some tension to drop. I had to drop some other pins, and now I'm really trying to just focus on rotating 3 around with not near as much tension on that sidebar because other pins dropped. I got to go back and fix what dropped. That was 6, 5, that one feels like a mushroom. So once you're on a mushroom, they'll give counter rotation when you lift. I don't know if you noticed, but that false set got deeper when I set this pin. All right, now that one's good. Something must have dropped slightly. It was pin 6. So I don't know. Tried to do the best I could to explain all that. Maybe that will help somebody. False gates are pretty nasty, so you don't be afraid to release tension, to have to drop driver pins to get out of those false gates. That's totally normal. You're probably going to have to, once you figure out you're in a false gate later in the pick, once driver pins are set and a lot of the rotations are set, that sidebar is going to be binding real hard. But early in the pick, before you lift driver pins, it's really hard to determine whether you're in a false gate or a true gate, because it'll still pass, they call it the clicky test because you can hear that pin clicking, but you can't always hear it clicking, so go by feel too. But the rotation will seem like it's set early on, even if it's in a false gate. So if they're not that difficult to blind pick, but if you have a key, you can kind of see what the rotations need to be. So like pin 6 has to go like that, and 5 also has to go like that. Pin 4 is this way, pin 3 is this way, and 1 and 2 are straight. So if you're having trouble with a pin in particular and you can't get it rotated and you got to release tension to drop stuff, usually I just try to rotate that pin all the way one direction and then set everything that dropped, check it. If it's still bound, drop some things, rotate that pin all the way back the other direction, and then check it again. But as I'm lifting, whatever pin I was stuck on, you kind of scrub and lift at the same time, just trying to finesse that pin to line up with the prong on the sidebar. So it just takes practice, and sometimes I still struggle with them. These Medecos are not the easiest lock to pick, and those false gates are pretty nasty. Some Medecos are pretty tricky, and depend on the keyway also. So like the military keyways are a little bit harder to rotate that pick around and really get a good handle on the key pin to move them around. So I'm not going to got this lock. I took pin 4 out of the other side to show that key pin at the beginning. But this C-clip is staked on there. So that's going to be really hard to get off. I might be able to roll it around and pinch it to spread it to get that plug out, but I'm not going to do that for the purpose of this video. There's plenty of other videos that show how to gut these. The only thing that I would say is when you take this sidebar out, pay attention to how it comes out. If you're filming a video for a belt request, show just show everything, obviously, as much as you can on the lock, but it has to go in a certain direction. If you put it in upside down, I mean, it won't function, so you'll know, but it's a lot easier to put that in correctly the first time. There's a wider part, a flat spot on the bottom that goes down, so you'll be able to tell. It'll look different. It's not symmetrical, so just make sure you got the wider flat part down. All right, that was the Medeco biaxial. All right, one thing I forgot to mention was pick selection. So for that, I used a round Jimmy Long hook, but a lot of times something with a more pointy tip, like a gem or even a flat, sometimes works better because you can really grab and hook the side of that pin to pull it around, and same thing when you're pushing it. Instead of the round just kind of rolling off of it. I mean, it is possible, but sometimes this will work better. You may not have to release quite as much tension. It might be easier to get out of the false gates with something like a gem or a round. And also, I'll put some links to other videos that other people did that are much better than this one that I found helpful. You may have already seen them. Some of them you may not have. So that might help as well. So check those out too.